Okay, let's just dive straight into this explainer and explore a really chilling case study of human error, sheer exhaustion, and the downright terrifying power of our everyday routines. Have you ever driven home from work, pulled into your driveway, and suddenly realized you have absolutely no memory of the last 15 minutes of your commute? Your brain simply took over, operating on pure muscle memory. Well, today we're looking at a story that takes that exact psychological phenomenon, living on autopilot, to its absolute most terrifying extreme. She made dinner in someone else's kitchen. She watched TV on someone else's couch. She fell asleep in someone else's bed. And she had absolutely no idea. I mean, wow. This is the core of our case study today surrounding a nurse named Nina Carver. It sounds like an entirely unbelievable situation, but the steps that actually led her here are highly relatable. It all starts with the kind of bone-deep fatigue that completely alters how a human being processes reality. 12. That's the grueling number of hours Nina Carver was pulling during her night shifts at the hospital. 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. Now, if you have ever worked a graveyard shift, you know exactly what happens to your perception of the world when 6 a.m. rolls around. The world just kind of gets soft at the edges, right? Everything blurs just enough that you completely stop actively questioning what you're seeing, and your brain just tries to move your physical body from point A to point B with the absolute least amount of resistance possible. So, that brings us to the front door. At 6 a.m. in the pouring rain, Nina arrives at what she completely 100% believes is her house. She puts her key in the lock, and it turns. Now, she'd later note that something felt just slightly different about the resistance in that lock. It was maybe just a fraction of a second too loose. But here's the thing, tired people don't investigate fractions of seconds. When you're running on fumes, your brain actively ignores those minor anomalies in favor of just completing the routine. So she simply pushed the door open and stepped inside. And this is just a brilliant illustration of the sheer power of confirmation bias. Let's look at the anomalies Nina's brain just paved right over. She went to the kitchen for some water and noticed the glasses were in the third cabinet, not the second. Her brain immediately rationalized it. Oh, my husband Daniel must be rearranging the cupboards again. She went upstairs, saw a lump under the covers in the dark bedroom, and assumed it was her sleeping husband. She went to the bathroom, found her toothbrush on the left side instead of the right, and again, her exhausted mind just rewrote the facts to fit her expected reality. She didn't even turn on a single light because she didn't want to wake her husband. She just changed out of her scrubs and climbed into bed. Just 4 minutes. Seriously, that's the terrifyingly small amount of time it took for Nina to fall fast asleep after climbing into a bed she completely believed was her own. 4 minutes of lying next to a totally unfamiliar shape in the absolute darkness before her exhaustion finally pulled her under. Now, to really grasp the creeping suspense of the situation, we actually have to rewind and look at what was happening in this house hours earlier. At 2 a.m., the real homeowner, a woman named Carol, had woken up to use the restroom and found a stranger's bag sitting right by her front door. She noticed someone sleeping in her guest room. For over an hour, Carol was sitting in the dark, absolutely petrified. Fast forward to 3:07 a.m. Nina, who is peacefully asleep, suddenly wakes up to a sound. Not a loud crash, but the slow, deliberate creak of a floorboard. Nina is lying completely still in the dark. She whispers her husband's name. Daniel? No answer. Instinctively, she reaches to her left, into the darkness, fully expecting to feel his arm. Her hand finds absolutely nothing. She sits up, and the bedroom door is now wide open. Standing in the hallway, backlit by this faint gray light, is a figure. Nina locks eyes with a terrified, shaking middle-aged woman wearing a robe. And the woman is holding a lit phone with 911 already dialed into the screen. So the really crucial point here is that it's only in this exact moment, fueled by a massive sudden spike of pure adrenaline, that Nina's brain finally shuts off the autopilot. The fear overrides the fatigue. For the very first time in 8 hours, Nina's brain allows her to truly look at her environment. And suddenly she sees it. The furniture is entirely wrong. The shapes in the room are completely different. There's a dresser where there definitely shouldn't be one. There's a strange mirror on the wall. The illusion just completely shatters. Okay, but how does this even happen, right? Well, this entire terrifying event was set into motion by an incredible geographical coincidence. On the left is Nina's actual home at 14 Aldermore Court. On the right, Carol's home at 14 Aldermore Close. 2 completely separate streets, sitting right next to each other, literally separated by a single letter in their names. But it wasn't just the street names. Both houses had faded brick facades, both had black front doors, both had a small porch light situated on the exact same side,
And, incredibly, both driveways had a silver sedan parked in them. Just think about your own daily routine for a second. If you're walking up to a house that perfectly matches this visual checklist in the pouring rain after being awake for over 24 hours, your brain is absolutely going to tell you that you are home.
Okay, but you're probably wondering, how did she actually get inside? What are the odds that a random key would perfectly open a total stranger's door? Let's walk through the mechanics of this mystery. 2 weeks prior to this night, Carol's son accidentally jammed his key in the front door. A locksmith came out to fix it, but the repair was kind of imperfect. The inner mechanism was left just a bit looser than it should have been. It was just loose enough that a random key, Nina's key, inserted with enough force by someone wanting to just get out of the rain, was actually able to catch the tumblers and turn the lock. A totally random sequence of events 2 weeks prior created the absolute perfect storm.
We spent a lot of time on Nina's state of mind, but think about this perspective for a second. 1 hour and 7 minutes. That is exactly how long Carol, the homeowner, sat completely petrified on the edge of her bed in the dark. She was listening to a total stranger sleep in her house, trying to work up the courage to press call on that 911 screen. It's a really profound reminder that our completely harmless mistakes can sometimes be someone else's absolute worst nightmare. The resolution to this intense standoff is actually strangely grounded. I mean, there was no crime committed here, no break-in intended. After the initial shock wore off and some very hushed explanations were whispered in the kitchen over morning tea, Nina simply walked out, got in her car, and drove down the street. At 7:30 a.m., she pulled into her actual driveway, just 2 minutes down the road. Her husband Daniel was already awake, making coffee, completely unaware of the psychological thriller his wife had just lived through.
Nina later told Carol she'd start sleeping with her contact lenses in so she could actually read the street signs. But honestly, the truth is, she still hasn't. The pull of routine is just too strong. We all rely on autopilot to get us through our exhausting lives. But the next time you pull into your driveway, turn off the engine, and walk up to your front door entirely lost in your own thoughts, maybe take a second to just look up. Because, honestly, you never know whose kitchen you might be standing in.